All right, we're live. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I have with me Jackie Sinex, who is the founder and operator of WEBii. And Jackie, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about your agency. We're going to be going through a few questions today, but can you tell folks just kind of what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me, David. So WebII is a custom web design development firm. We have been in business since 1996, so we've evolved quite a bit over the years, doing different kinds of technology and projects. And we work with a variety of customers, including higher ed and e-learning types of businesses, business-to-business companies, and nonprofit organizations.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so what got you into the agency world in the first place? I feel like everyone has a slightly different story for how they got sucked into it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you said sucked into it, isn't it? For me, it was a little bit of self-interest, self-passion, and a little bit of happenstance. So through a friend who introduced me to some of the newer internet tools around 95, 96, I was hooked on things like IRC chat and the ability to talk to people all over the world. And I was just really interested, self-interested in the internet. I was also studying fine arts at the time for a long time. And through my college journey, I continued to study fine arts, but then I was also really interested in HTML and front-end web development and just doing that kind of on my own and trying to kind of combine art with digital and doing more graphic arts and things like that, and thinking that that was going to be where my career path was going to go. And the happenstance part, besides the internet just kind of landing on me, was by the time I graduated college, the job market wasn't fantastic. And so I did a lot of job hunting for graphic design jobs and similar jobs, and I wasn't landing anything for a long time. And long story short, it kind of led me to work with my partner on what was then mostly a web hosting company, and we evolved it together over time to be more of a custom web development firm. And I just kind of went all in at one point and said, enough of this job hunting. Let's do this instead.
Yeah. I'm gonna work for myself because nobody else, it's not working out to find it some other way. So
Yes. And
no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you've been going strong for a long time, it sounds like. Well, I mean, with that comes lots of lessons you've likely learned over the years.
Mhm.
I'd love for you to tell some stories or just, kind of convey what are some of the big takeaways that you've had, whether they're mistakes or wins. Like what are some of your big learnings that you've taken over the years?
Definitely. In since the early days, my role has always involved a little bit of business development, and it is a part that I enjoy. And that's kind of evolved over time. But some of the mistakes that I remember in the earlier years is that I didn't feel super confident and comfortable with sales yet, and I honestly just wanted everyone to like me a lot. And I'd like all of our customers, which is fine, but I would allow scope creep to happen.
Mhm.
I would allow them to, at first it would be little things. Well, can you also do this for no more money? Or can you also do this for just a tiny bit of money? And we were saying yes a little bit too much, and it was becoming a problem. And I remember when we, for example, there was a bigger project, and when you see a bigger scope become problematic, when you're not billing for the actual time being spent, and then the whole team starts to suffer, and the project loses money.
Mhm.
So we learned some pretty heavy lessons that way many years ago, and I think they were really good lessons because we actually recognized like these were the red flag moments during this project where we should have said no, or we should have given a different solution, or we should have had a conversation maybe. I am a strong believer that most of the problems, whether it was a business development or a project management problem, is just a lack of communication at some point.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it's on both ends. Sometimes it's our team didn't proactively ask the client something, and sometimes it's the client has their own drama in the background that they're not telling us about.
Yeah.
So we've learned those lessons as well, and I don't think you can 100% solve it all 100% of the time, but if you're aware of the fact that you need to communicate frequently and you need to make sure the client expects that, then it avoids a lot of problems.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and another like business development related thing that comes to mind is I also would find myself sometimes almost being too confident in a sales situation where that it's okay to be confident, but I would feel this great rapport on that first meeting or that first call, and I'm just like, we're definitely going to land this project, and it's going to be amazing, and they just like us, and I can just tell we're going to get it. And then we would go to that next meeting not really fully prepared, and then not win the project, and really just kind of feel defeated.
Mhm.
And so I think we've learned to never get complacent and overly confident, and just kind of treat each thing with respect.
Oh, those are good takeaways. Do you feel like both of those lessons, the communication one and the complacency one, are things that every agency is going to have to kind of learn the hard way, or do you feel like there is like a way to kind of dodge it um, by kind of trying to apply, like put things in place to navigate those waters? Like,
I
I guess,
definitely think it's possible to plan. I
yeah.
think it's possible to avoid things with, an understanding and expectation at the front end, whether it's in your organization, whether it's a proposal stage type of person, or if it's the kickoff meeting, whatever that looks like, I feel like you can plan for more success. That said, everyone's a different personality, including the client. And sometimes you learn hard lessons in the middle of a project, whether you could prepare for that or not. Other, instances where we had a particularly difficult project were usually circumstances beyond control, like the company was acquired in the middle, or, management changed and our point of contact changed. And those are things you can't necessarily prepare for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is probably a good segue to my next question, which is just around, every agency has to grow, has to bring on new business. We've talked a little bit about sales and kind of lessons there, but I guess over the years, what sort of strategies have you found are the most effective at just growing your client base?
Yeah. So we've definitely been, I'm just very proud, and um, I feel privileged that we do have a lot of repeat business from similar clients or the same client for the last many years. So I think part of it is doing great work and delivering what you said you were going to do to, on time, on budget, whatever that means for the
Hmm.
client can actually pay off as a sales win. But as far as like other business development, lead nurturing, that type of thing, we also try to remind ourselves to treat our own company with marketing 101 and some marketing internally, and sometimes put our own website on the board or whatever that looks like. So our own SEO also brings in a good amount of inbound. Um, Another benefit for us, which I don't know if everyone can replicate, but hopefully there are some people who can, is it's actually very beneficial to be an established company in the state of Texas, because Texas organizations tend to shop local and they do look for proven companies in the state of Texas. And so that puts us on a couple of lists that help us to, rise into the top of maybe an inbound call.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful. But we still have to prove ourselves, and do a little bit of presentation and pitching to get those opportunities. But it does give us a little bit of a leg up. But most of the business that we've received since the beginning has been based on referrals. That said, again, I think it's really important not to be complacent, because during the COVID period and some of the downturns of the economy, there was not as much referral business coming in. So I think it's important to have more than one channel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, you touched on this a little bit just a second ago, but just about communicating your unique value. Can you talk about how you think about that and how you communicate it to people, whether it's in your marketing or in your sales conversations, or even just like in networking and things like that?
That's a good question, Dave. I think so. My favorite words are communication and collaboration, and I just bring them up a lot in conversations with our existing team and then also just colleagues networking. It probably comes out a little more naturally just in conversation, just because I really believe in those concepts. Um, However, I've learned, I'm sure there's some web developers out there who are going to giggle at this, but I've learned that we're not all the same, and that there are a lot of talented programmers, for example, that are really terrible at communication or project management or running a business, right? And so, unfortunately, prospects often come to us having been disappointed from a previous incident. And so,
Mm.
we've kind of learned what their pain looks like and how we make that better by listening to the customer and actually trying to help them with a solution that meets their needs rather than just say, here's a box and we're going to put you in the box and sell this to you,
Yeah.
which I think happens a lot actually. So knowing that helps, because then if someone asks me like what problems we can solve, or if they're explaining something that maybe a particular nonprofit organization just had a failed web project, then I kind of know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
And that's helped tremendously, just to know the unfortunate stories, but know that it can be better and maybe help paint a picture for them on what the relationship could actually look like.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of similar to, I always like using metaphors in like the medical profession, but I think it works because it's like you have somebody who comes from maybe a doctor that they had a bad experience with. And so like when they come to you, they're like, they just want somebody who's going to listen to them. And just when they describe their symptoms and kind of what they're looking for, who's going to spend a lot more time listening before they start trying to kind of throw some sort of one size fits all solution at them. So I think the metaphor holds, that listening and communication makes a huge difference in just helping to build trust with that potential client.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. And in fact, you may not necessarily just be giving them peace of mind by creating a web design. You may be giving them peace of mind by taking a task that they feel is monumental because they don't know how to accomplish it off of their shoulders.
Hmm.
So if we're making some marketing manager or executive's life easier, that's really what they're looking for. And I think listening in on, what are the areas where you're like really struggling right now, it usually comes down to something more like that, rather than I just need a beautiful website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned a little bit ago that you've had multiple clients for quite a long time. So I think I'm sure other people would love to learn more, kind of like of what sort of secrets you might have around like client satisfaction, retention, yeah, just keeping your clients happy and around for a long time.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I do believe that our team does good work and cares about the work. So even if we have quite a range of projects, but most of them are on the smaller side. And I think some of the smaller organizations, or let's say small projects for an organization, so it may not be like the largest project that they have, but they have like 2 or 3 small things. Treating that with the same amount of respect that an agency might treat like an enterprise client, it goes a long way. They sort of feel like they're getting tailored service, like concierge service.
Yeah.
Um, so that's worked well for us. And I think one of the successes I've noticed with this pattern of we've had several different customers that are in kind of an executive marketing role, and they're responsible for a lot of stuff, and they have to make the company look good. And that's really hard because they have just so much on their plate. And a lot of these people are very talented, but they don't have a huge marketing team under them. So they're asked to do everything in the world, including the technical stuff that has to do with the marketing stuff. And so by making them look good, it's sort of a no-brainer to them that they're going to come back someday. And we've had a nice success in some of these leaders, even when they change companies or change careers, kind of contact us again. That's been really lovely. And I think it all came down to, we not only took the task that they had to get done and got it done on time, but also just made them look good to their boss. And
Yeah.
that was like the really ultimate success for them. And then they could just focus on whatever else is on their plate. So doing that, it makes it a lot easier for them to come back and have conversations with us. I do like some other basic tasks that I think are really impactful too, just for new prospects. So when a client wraps up a project and it's in like a really nice, kind of wrap up phase, maybe we're doing a final training or something, or a final handoff, and I know that, we had a nice conversation, they're in a good mood. I have a nicely crafted message I'll send out to them, on the easiest way to do a Google review for us. And I'll just tell them, like, this is a way that you can support our company in about 5 minutes. And getting their Google reviews has really helped a lot. I mean, not everyone has the time or thought to do a review, but if you ask a good client, they will do it. And then that actually does help us quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, it probably helps team morale too.
Yeah.
Because like when you start seeing, it's like, oh, here's somebody actually giving us feedback and being like, hey, this was a really big win that we got because of your team. And yeah, I think that's great. Well, that also segues nicely into kind of my next question, which is around attracting and retaining talent. So, we just talked about attracting and retaining clients, but I'd love it if you can kind of speak to kind of the staffing side of things and how you've thought about that.
Sure. Yeah. We're a small agency. We're less than 20 people. We have been since the beginning, and it's a good number for us. It's worked well. Had a great retention rate. The way that I kind of started leaning into that more about 10 years ago, I heard a speaker at a conference that was really helpful to me. And they were talking about a different perspective on employee reviews and human resources. And one of the things that really stuck with me was, instead of going through that typical checklist once a year and saying, like, these are the performance mechanisms, why don't you just ask the employee a bunch of questions about what they want and what's working and what's not? And so I kind of started having that perspective instead. And we now have really meaningful, helpful, more regular conversations with our colleagues, that are really just that. It's us asking about their workload level and how they feel about it. It's us asking, like, what's working, what's not, what resources do you not have, what do you have, what are you not using, what are you using? And then giving them permission to have a voice at any point in a project or company operations. So we've had some really good improvements, like slowly but surely, on just tools that we use or project management processes, because an employee spoke up and they said, I think this process is kind of a waste of time. Let's look at doing this instead. Would you be open to that? And then we were, and we ended up implementing their idea. And I think when you tell people that's your culture and then they see it happen, then they tend to, feel respected and seen. I know I would. So that little conference speech for that few minutes really made a difference for me. And I think that I've started implementing that on a regular basis. And then whenever we do have a big challenge, which, they happen, big project, and there's something complex and maybe a client is nervous or panicking and we got to, face it together. I also try to make sure that my teammates know that we can do it together. It's not just on their shoulders. They're not solely responsible for figuring out how to fix one problem. If it's a big deal and they need support, then, hey, I'm here to help. Let's figure this out together. So I think that really helps a lot with retention. And then, because of that, even when people have maybe been early career and stayed with us for a few years and maybe moved on to a different career, they still remain friends with us. And I think that helps with at least our local community knowing that we're a good place to work.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think I've definitely been in multiple environments where it's kind of been on the opposite side of that. I mean, and I've also been in environments where it's been on the better side as well. And it's amazing how much it makes a difference when leadership is kind of giving you ownership, but also kind of freedom to be able to push back or ask questions, or even just kind of be like, here's where other things are blocking me, and then leadership can come in and actually just help clear things out of the way so that they can do their best work.
Yep.
So I feel like that's the biggest thing a lot of times, is like just freeing up your team to do what they do best, and try to get out of the way sometimes.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie, for coming on. If people want to connect with you, stay in touch with you, and learn more about WEBii, what are the best ways for them to follow up with you?
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. Great ways to find me or us is our website. I would say first and foremost, webii.net or .com. I like to be present on LinkedIn pretty frequently. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Sinex. That's JSINEX.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling everyone a little bit more about your agency. And yeah, looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Bye.